Specialist Emma Cross had heard it all before, the whispers behind her back, the jokes in the barracks, the looks that said she didn't belong. At 28 years old, she'd spent 6 years in the army, 6 years proving herself, 6 years being twice as good to get half the respect, but respect wasn't what bothered her most. It was being invisible when it mattered. Emma stood in the briefing room at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows. Outside, the base hummed with the usual sounds. Helicopters overhead, soldiers running drills, the American flag snapping in the September wind. Inside, Sergeant Derek Hannigan commanded the room like he always did, tall, broad-shouldered, 15 years in the service. A voice that could cut through steel. He was outlining the training exercise scheduled for the next day, a routine patrol simulation through the nearby woods and abandoned industrial area. 7 soldiers, standard procedure. Emma raised her hand. Hannigan's eyes barely flickered toward her. Cross. Sergeant, I reviewed the terrain maps last night, she said. Her voice was steady. Professional. The old chemical plant we're routing through. I checked the county records. There was structural damage reported after the storms last month. The building's been red-tagged. Hannigan stared at her for 3 long seconds. Then he smiled. Not a friendly smile. That's very thorough of you, Cross, he said. The other soldiers shifted in their seats. But this is the same route we've used for 2 years. I think I know what I'm doing. Heat crept up Emma's neck, but she pushed forward. I understand, Sergeant, but the county inspector's report specifically mentions, are you a structural engineer now? Hannigan cut her off. His tone had changed. Harder now. Or are you still a specialist who's been here less time than most of these soldiers have been out of basic training? Someone snickered. Emma didn't look to see who. I'm just saying we should verify, noted. Hannigan's voice was final. Anyone else have concerns? Real concerns? Silence. Emma's jaw tightened. She knew better than to push further. She'd learned that lesson the hard way over the years. That as the briefing ended, the other soldiers filed out. Emma gathered her papers slowly. Her hands didn't shake. She wouldn't give anyone the satisfaction. Still trying to rewrite the manual. Cross. The voice belonged to Corporal Jake Mendez. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Not hostile exactly, but not kind either. Just doing my job, Emma replied quietly. Your job is to follow orders, not second-guess the sergeant. He shook his head. You keep pushing like this, you're gonna make enemies. I'm trying to keep people safe. You're trying to prove you're smarter than everyone else. Mendez walked away before she could respond. Emma stood alone in the empty room. This wasn't new. She'd grown up the only daughter of a single mother in rural Tennessee. She'd learned early that being a woman meant working harder for less recognition. The military was supposed to be different, merit-based, fair, but some things never changed. She thought back to her first deployment, Iraq, 3 years ago. She'd spotted an IED that the patrol had almost missed. Saved 4 lives that day. Her reward, a pat on the back and whispers that she'd gotten lucky. When Sergeant First Class Rodriguez praised her attention to detail, others said she was trying to sleep her way up when she outscored everyone in her unit on marksmanship. They said the tests must have been easy when she volunteered for extra duty. They said she was showing off. Emma had stopped expecting fairness a long time ago, but she never stopped doing her job. That evening, she sat in her small quarters. The single room wasn't much. A bed, a desk, a window overlooking the training grounds, pictures of her mother on the wall, the American flag her father had been buried with, folded in a triangle on her shelf. He'd died when she was 6. Also Army, also Fort Campbell. A training accident that should have been prevented. Maybe that's why she couldn't let this go. Emma opened her laptop. She pulled up the county records again. There it was, black and white, the old Bennett chemical plant. Structural damage to the eastern wing, unstable flooring, risk of collapse. Red tagged 3 weeks ago. She drafted an email to Hannigan, attached the documents, wrote it 3 times to get the tone right, respectful but clear. Her finger hovered over send. Then she remembered his face during the briefing. The dismissal, the mockery. She sent it anyway. No response came that night. The next morning arrived cold and gray. October was creeping into Kentucky. The leaves were turning gold and red. Beautiful. If you had time to notice. Emma reported to the staging area at 0. The rest of the squad was already there. Hannigan stood with his arms crossed, reviewing his tablet. He looked up when Emma approached. Got your email, Cross. His voice was flat. Unreadable hope flickered in her chest. Maybe he'd listened. Maybe I also got confirmation from base command. The route is approved. The building passed military inspection last year. Whatever county report you found is outdated or irrelevant. He locked eyes with her. We're proceeding as planned. That clear? The hope died. Yes, Sergeant. Good, gear up. Emma felt the weight of the other soldiers' eyes on her. Some sympathetic, most indifferent. This was just another day to them. Corporal Mendez, Private First Class Thompson, Specialist Garcia, Private Lee Specialist Brooks, and Private Young, fresh out of training. 7 soldiers total, including Hannigan, 8 including Emma. They loaded into 2 Humvees. Emma rode in the second vehicle with Garcia, Brooks, and Young. Nobody spoke much. This was routine, a training exercise they'd all done before, well, everyone except Emma. The drive took 20 minutes. They passed through farmland and patches of forest. The old industrial area came into view, abandoned buildings from the 1970s, rusted equipment, broken windows. The Bennett chemical plant sat at the center, a sprawling complex of metal and concrete. It looked dead, forgotten, dangerous. As they exited the vehicles, Emma's training kicked in. She scanned the perimeter, checked her gear, rifle ready but not raised. This was a simulation, but they treated it like the real thing. That's what made it useful. Hannigan gathered them in a circle. Standard patrol. We move through the complex, clear each section, rendezvous at the western checkpoint. By the numbers, stay sharp. His eyes swept across them. Questions. No one spoke. Move out. They entered the complex in formation. The October wind whistled through broken windows. Their boots crunched on gravel and broken glass. Everything smelled like rust and decay. Emma's pulse was steady, her breathing controlled, but something felt wrong, a feeling in her gut. The same feeling she'd had in Iraq before she spotted that. She'd learned to trust that feeling. They moved deeper into the complex, through the main floor, past old assembly lines and empty offices, toward the eastern wing, the red-tagged section. Emma keyed her radio. Sergeant, we're approaching the eastern wing. Copy that. Proceed. Her jaw tightened. Sergeant, recommend we route around the structural integrity cross. I'm not going to tell you again. Follow orders. The radio went silent. The squad moved forward, into the eastern wing. And Emma knew, with absolute certainty, that something terrible was about to happen. The eastern wing of the Bennett chemical plant looked worse up close. Water damage stained the concrete walls. The ceiling sagged in places, exposing rusted metal beams. The floor was a patchwork of cracked tiles and exposed foundation. Emma's instincts screamed at her to stop, to turn back, but Sergeant Hannigan pressed forward. The rest of the squad followed. They always followed. Emma had learned a long time ago that being right didn't matter if nobody listened. She'd been right about the supply route inefficiencies at her last posting, right about the faulty communications equipment during a joint exercise, right about the pattern of security breaches that led to a major incident investigation. Being right just made her a target. Keep spacing, Hannigan ordered. His voice echoed through the empty space. Thompson, check that corridor. Garcia, cover him. The squad spread out. Emma moved with them, every nerve on high alert. She studied the floor. The cracks weren't random. They followed a pattern. Stress fractures, weight distribution failure. She'd seen similar damage after earthquakes during disaster relief training. This building was dying, slowly pulling itself apart, and they were walking right through its most vulnerable section. Sergeant, she tried one more time, kept her voice calm, professional. I'm seeing significant structural damage. Multiple load-bearing supports show corrosion. We should cross. What you should do is focus on your sector. Hannigan didn't even look at her. I don't need a running commentary. Private Young, barely 20 years old, glanced nervously at Emma. He was brand new. This was his first field exercise. Is it really unsafe, Specialist? Before Emma could answer, Corporal Mendez cut in. It's fine, Yang. Crosshair just likes to make everything complicated. I'm not trying to complicate anything, Emma said quietly. I'm trying to keep us safe. By questioning every decision the sergeant makes. Mendez shook his head. That's not safety. That's ego. Emma bit back her response. Arguing would only make it worse. They'd been calling it ego her entire career, when she was the only woman in her training class who refused to lower her standards. They called it ego when she reported sexual harassment from a superior officer. They called it ego when she earned her expert infantry badge on the first try, outscoring men who'd been in the service twice as long. They definitely called it ego. It was never competence, never dedication, never courage. Always ego. The squad moved deeper into the eastern wing. They were about 40 feet inside now. The building wrapped around them like a tomb. The only light came from their tactical flashlights and the occasional broken window. Emma's eyes kept tracking to the ceiling, the support beams, the walls. Everything told a story if you knew how to read it. She'd grown up in an old farmhouse that her mother constantly worried about. Every crack, every shift, every strange sound meant potential disaster they couldn't afford to fix. Emma had learned to see structural problems the way others saw weather patterns, natural, obvious. This building was screaming its warnings, but nobody else was listening. Hold position, Hannigan ordered. He checked his tablet, reviewing the exercise parameters. We'll do a simulated equipment check here. 5 minutes. Stay alert. The squad settled into position. Brooks and Garcia moved to the windows. Thompson covered the rear corridor. Mendez stayed close to Hannigan. Emma positioned herself near Young, who still looked nervous. First time is always weird, she said quietly. You're doing fine. Young nodded. Thanks, specialist. Can I ask you something? Sure. Are you really worried about the building, or are you just testing the sergeant? The question caught her off guard. Young's eyes were genuine, not hostile, just curious. Emma glanced at Hannigan, who was conferring with Mendez on the other side of the room. Out of earshot, I'm really worried, she said. I spent half of last night reviewing engineering reports and county records. This building failed its last inspection. The storm damage 3 weeks ago made it worse. But the sergeant said military inspection cleared it. A year ago. Before the storms, before the red tag. Emma kept her voice low. I'm not trying to undermine him. I'm trying to make sure we all go home. Young processed this. So what do? We follow orders. But we stay aware. If anything feels wrong, any sound, any shift, you move fast. Don't wait for permission. Just get out. It was the best she could offer. The 5-minute check stretched to 7. Hannigan was thorough. Emma had to give him that. He might be stubborn and dismissive, but he took training seriously. Under different circumstances, she might have respected him. All right, let's move, Hannigan finally ordered. Next checkpoint is through the processing room ahead. Standard formation. They reassembled, started moving forward again. That's when Emma heard it. A sound like a groan. Deep and low, metal under stress. She froze. Stop. Nobody stopped. I said stop. Her voice was sharper now, urgent. This time they paused. Hannigan turned, irritation clear on his face. What now? Cross. Listen. They stood in silence. For 3 seconds, there was nothing. Just the wind through broken windows. Then it came again. A deep, grinding groan from above. Emma's eyes shot to the ceiling. A support beam near the center of the room was shifting, almost imperceptibly. But shifting. We need to leave. Now. Her voice was steady, but firm. Everyone move back the way we came. Quickly and calmly. Cross. Stand down. Hannigan's voice was hard. That's just the building settling. These old places make noise. It doesn't mean the groan came again. Louder this time. Dust drifted down from the ceiling. Thompson noticed it too. Sergeant, maybe we should. Nobody moves until I give the order. Hannigan's jaw was set. His pride was on the line now. Emma could see it in his eyes. If he backed down, if he admitted she was right, it would undermine his authority. And his authority mattered more than their safety. Emma's mind raced. She could follow orders, stand down, hope nothing happened, or she could trust her gut, trust her training, trust what she knew to be true. She'd spent 6 years following orders that didn't make sense. 6 years watching men make decisions that put people at risk because their pride wouldn't let them admit error. Her father had died in a training accident, a preventable one, because someone in charge made a bad call and nobody spoke up. Emma wasn't going to let that happen again. Private Young Specialist Garcia moved to the exit. Now, her voice carried command. Not aggressive, not panic, just absolute. Young hesitated for only a second. Then he started moving. Garcia looked between Emma and Hannigan, uncertain. Cross. You are directly disobeying, Hannigan started. Another groan. Louder. A crack appeared in the ceiling. Thin but visible. Everyone out. Emma's voice cut through everything. Go, go. This time, instinct overrode protocol. Young ran. Garcia followed. Brooks was right behind them. Thompson grabbed his gear and moved toward the exit. Hold position. Hannigan shouted, but his voice was competing with the sound of the building dying around them. The crack in the ceiling widened. Emma saw it spread like lightning across the concrete. Mendez saw it too. His eyes went wide. Sergeant, we need to. The support beam gave way. Not completely, not yet. But it dropped 6 inches with a screech of tortured metal. Hannigan's face went pale. Move. Everyone move. He finally gave the order, but it was almost too late. The squad ran for the exit. Emma counted them as they passed. Young, Garcia, Brooks, Thompson, Mendez, 5 out. Hannigan was running now too, heavy boots pounding on cracked tile. Emma turned to follow. That's when she saw the ceiling collapse. Time slowed down the way it always did in crisis moments. Emma saw the support beam snap completely, saw the ceiling section directly above begin its fall, saw the cascade of destruction that would follow, and saw Sergeant Hannigan directly in its path. He was looking back, checking his squad, didn't see what was coming. Emma didn't think. Thinking took too long. She launched herself forward. Her shoulder hit Hannigan's midsection in a tackle that would have made her high school football coach proud. They crashed to the ground together, rolled. The impact drove the air from Emma's lungs. Behind them, 2 tons of concrete and steel crashed down exactly where Hannigan had been standing. The impact shook the entire building. Dust exploded outward in a choking cloud. The sound was deafening. More groans echoed through the structure. More cracks appeared. The collapse was spreading. Emma dragged air back into her lungs, pushed herself up. Hannigan was beneath her, stunned but moving. Get up. She grabbed his vest, hauling him to his feet. We have to move. He stumbled. She caught him. His eyes were wide with shock. They ran together toward the exit. The floor beneath them cracked with each step. Behind them, the eastern wing was eating itself alive. Emma could hear the others shouting from outside, could see the doorway ahead, 30 feet, 20. Another section of ceiling gave way. Off to their right, the domino effect was accelerating. 10 feet. The floor beneath Hannigan's foot cracked. His leg dropped through up to his knee. He went down hard with a cry of pain. Emma skidded to a stop, spun back. Hannigan shouted at her, "Get out." Not happening. Emma grabbed under his arms. On 3, pull your leg out. 1, 2, 3. She hauled upward. Hannigan pulled. His leg came free, boot shredded but intact. She got his arm over her shoulder. He was 6 inches taller and outweighed her by 70 pounds. Didn't matter. Adrenaline was a beautiful thing. They staggered toward the exit together. 5 feet. The doorway was right there. Hands reached in. Mendez and Garcia grabbed Hannigan, pulled him through. Emma was right behind them. She cleared the threshold just as the entire eastern wing collapsed. The sound was like the end of the world, a roar of destruction that went on and on. The building folded in on itself. Walls buckled. Windows exploded. A cloud of dust and debris billowed outward. Emma hit the ground and rolled, covered her head as debris rained down around them, then silence. She lay there for a moment, heart pounding, ears ringing, breathing dust and fear. Sound off. Mendez's voice cut through the haze. Everyone, sound off. Garcia here. Brooks, here. Thompson, here. Young here. Hannigan, here. The sergeant's voice was strained but strong. Cross. Mendez called. Cross. Sound off. Emma pushed herself up to her knees, coughed out a lungful of dust. Here, I'm here. Relief washed over the faces around her. They were all there. All 8 of them. Dirty, shaken, but alive. Every single one. Emma looked back at the building. The entire eastern wing was gone. Just a pile of rubble and twisted metal. The western sections were damaged to... The whole structure looked like it might come down any second if they'd been in there. 30 seconds longer. She didn't finish the thought. Hannigan was sitting on the ground, leaning against one of the Humvees. His face was gray. His hands shook slightly. He stared at the ruins of the building like he was seeing a ghost. Maybe he was. The ghost of what almost happened. Mendez approached Emma. His expression was complicated. That was, you saved... I know, Emma said quietly. If you hadn't pushed us to move when you did, I know. Young sat nearby, his young face pale with shock. We would have died. All of us. Thompson just nodded. He couldn't seem to find words. Garcia crossed himself. Dios mío. Brooks met Emma's eyes. You tried to tell us. You tried to warn us. Emma didn't respond. What was there to say? She walked over to where Hannigan sat, lowered herself down beside him. Her legs were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. They sat in silence for a long moment. You tackled me, Hannigan finally said. His voice was quiet, almost confused. Yes, Sergeant. I didn't listen to you. I dismissed you. I mocked you in front of the squad. He looked at her, really looked at her. And you still came back for me. Emma met his gaze. That's the job, Sergeant. We don't leave people behind, even when they're wrong. The words hung between them. Hannigan looked away first. I was wrong. Yes, you were. I could have gotten everyone killed. Yes, you could have. He flinched, but he didn't argue. I should have listened, he said. You did your homework. You came prepared. You gave me every chance to make the right call. His jaw tightened. I let my pride get in the way. I let my assumptions about you get in the way. There it was, out loud. Your assumptions, Emma repeated softly. I didn't take you seriously because you're young, because you haven't been here as long, because he struggled with it, because you're a woman and some part of me, some stupid, outdated part of me, didn't want to hear it from you. The honesty surprised her. Most men never got there, never admitted it. That's on me, Hannigan continued. My failure, my responsibility, and you saved my life anyway. Emma looked at her hands, scraped and dirty. I saved all of us. That's what matters. How did you know? He asked. How did you see what I couldn't? I paid attention. I did the research. And I trusted my training. She paused. My father died in a training accident at this base. Preventable. Someone made a bad call and people were too afraid to speak up. Hannigan closed his eyes. I'm sorry. I didn't tell you that for sympathy. I told you so you understand. I question things not because I'm trying to undermine authority. I do it because silence kills people. I understand that now. Sirens wailed in the distance. Emergency response vehicles. Someone had called it in. Base command would be here soon. There would be questions. An investigation. Reports to file. Consequences. Double quotes. What are you going to tell them? Emma asked. Hannigan looked at the ruins. At his squad. At Emma. The truth, he said. All of it. You warned me. Multiple times. I ignored you. You were right. You saved us. He stood up slowly, testing his injured leg. And you deserve full credit for that. Emma stood too. Sergeant, you don't have to. Yes, I do. His voice was firm now. Command voice. I have to because it's true. And because if I don't, I'm part of the problem. Mendez approached. Sergeant, base command is en route. 5 minutes. Good. Gather everyone. I want statements from each squad member. Accurate statements. No covering up what happened here. Yes, Sergeant. As Mendez walked away, Hannigan turned back to Emma. I'm recommending you for a commendation. Heroism in the line of duty. I was just doing my job. No, Cross. You did a lot more than that. He extended his hand. Thank you. For my life. And for not giving up on us even when we gave up on you. Emma shook his hand. His grip was firm. Respectful. It was a start. The investigation took 3 weeks. Base command interviewed everyone. Reviewed all communications. Examined the county records Emma had found. Brought in structural engineers to analyze the collapse. The findings were clear, unambiguous, damning. The Bennett chemical plant had been retagged for good reason. The building was structurally unsound. The eastern wing collapse was inevitable. It was only a matter of time if the squad had stayed inside. Casualty estimates ranged from severe injuries to total loss of life. The old military inspection Hannigan had relied on was outdated and incomplete. Someone in base operations had failed to update the training route. Protocols after the county's red tag. Heads rolled for that. But the report also documented something else. Emma's warnings, her research, her emails, her repeated attempts to raise the issue through proper channels. And it documented Hannigan's dismissals. Emma sat in the office of Colonel Patricia Morrison, the base commander. It was a grey November morning. Rain streaked the windows. Morrison was in her 50s. A career officer who'd come up through the ranks when being a woman in the military was even harder than it was now. She had a reputation for being fair but tough. She slid a document across her desk. Your commendation, signed and official. It goes in your permanent record. Emma picked it up. The words were formal, military, but they said what happened. That she'd shown exceptional awareness, courage, and leadership. That she'd saved 8 lives, including her own. Thank you, Mom. Don't thank me. You earned it. Morrison leaned back in her chair. Sergeant Hannigan's report was very thorough, very honest. He didn't try to minimize his errors or shift blame. That takes character. He's a good soldier, ma'am. He made a mistake that could have been catastrophic. Morrison's eyes were sharp. But you're right. He's a good soldier. And his honesty in this process says something about his integrity. What happens to him? Official reprimand. Additional training on protocols and safety procedures. He'll remain in his position. But this stays in his record. Morrison paused. He requested it, said he needed to own the consequences. Emma nodded slowly. Fair enough. What concerns me more is the pattern. Morrison continued. This isn't the first time you've raised legitimate safety issues. It's not even the first time you've been ignored. Emma shifted in her seat. I don't keep track, ma'am. Well, I do. I've reviewed your entire service record. I rack your marksman scores, your efficiency your harassment complaint. Morrison's expression hardened. You've consistently demonstrated exceptional competence and judgment, and you've consistently been dismissed, undermined, or penalized for it. That's That's just part of don't. Morrison's voice was sharp. Don't tell me it's just part of being a woman in the military. I know what it is. I lived it for 30 years. But we don't improve things by accepting them. Emma didn't know what to say to that. I'm making changes, Morrison said. New protocols for safety concerns. Direct reporting lines that bypass immediate command when necessary. Training for all senior personnel on cognitive bias and institutional discrimination. She looked directly at Emma. And I'm reassigning you. Emma's stomach dropped. Ma'am, you're being moved to a training and safety evaluation position. You'll review all training exercises, assess risks, and have direct authority to modify or cancel operations based on safety concerns. You'll report directly to my office. It took Emma a moment to process. That's a leadership position. Yes, it is. You've proven you have the judgment and courage it requires. Your new rank will be sergeant, effective immediately. Sergeant, a promotion she'd been passed over for twice before. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Or say no, but don't say you don't deserve it. We both know that's not true. Emma thought about her father, about the farmhouse she grew up in, about every time she'd been told she was too much or not enough, too pushy or too quiet, too aggressive or too emotional. That she thought about Private Young's nervous face, about the relief in Hannigan's eyes when they all made it out alive. Yes, ma'am, I accept. Morrison smiled. It transformed her stern face into something warmer. Good. You start Monday. Dismissed, Sergeant Crost. Emma stood, saluted, walked out of the office in a daze. Sergeant Crost. The hallway was empty. She let herself lean against the wall for a moment, let herself feel it, not just the promotion, the recognition, the acknowledgement that she'd been right, that her voice mattered. It was more than she'd expected. Hey, Sergeant, she looked up. Mendez stood a few feet away. He looked uncomfortable. Can we talk? Sure. He glanced around, made sure they were alone. I owe you an apology, a real one. I was an ass. I dismissed you, I mocked you, I undermined you in front of the squad. And you were right about everything. Apology accepted, just like that. Just like that. We don't have time for grudges. Corporal, we have work to do. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're going to be in a position where people have to listen to you. Me too. Over the next few days, word spread through the base. The story evolved with each telling. Some versions were accurate. Others were exaggerated, but the core remained the same. Specialist Cross now, Sergeant Cross had saved her entire squad when her warnings were ignored. The reaction was mixed. Some soldiers, especially younger ones and women, looked at her with new respect, with hope, like she'd proven something they needed proven. That others were resentful, saw her promotion as special treatment, affirmative action, political correctness. Emma heard the whispers, but they bothered her less now. Because for every person who resented her success, there were two who recognized her competence. That was better odds than she'd had before. On her last day in her old position, the squad gathered for an unofficial goodbye. It was awkward at first. Nobody quite knew what to say. Then Young stepped forward. Sergeant Cross, I just wanted to say thank you. You probably don't remember, but in the building you told me to stay aware, to trust my instincts and move fast if something felt wrong. I remember. That advice probably saved my life. And it's advice I'll carry my whole career. He extended his hand. I'm honored to have served with you. They shook hands. Emma felt something tight in her chesties. One by one, the others came forward. Garcia, Thompson, Brooks, even Mendez. Each one thanked her. Each one acknowledged what she'd done. Finally, Hannigan approached. He looked better than he had 3 weeks ago. The haunted look in his eyes had faded, but the humility remained. Sergeant Cross. He used her new rank deliberately. I won't take up much of your time. I just wanted to say that you're the best soldier I've ever served with. What happened in that building... You showed me what real leadership looks like. It's not about ego or authority. It's about making the right call even when it's hard, even when people don't want to hear it. Thank you, Sergeant Hannigan. I also wanted you to know I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About silence killing people. About speaking up. He paused. I've started talking to other NCOs about it, about our biases, about how we evaluate female soldiers differently. It's uncomfortable, but it's necessary. Emma felt something shift. This was more than an apology. This was actual change. That means a lot, she said quietly. You changed my life, Cross. Literally, the least I can do is try to change some minds. After they left, Emma stood alone in the empty room one last time. She thought about the girl she'd been, growing up without a father, watching her mother struggle, learning that the world wasn't fair, but you fought for your place in it anyway. She thought about the young soldier she'd been in Iraq, trying so hard to prove herself, to be perfect, to be undeniable. And she thought about who she was now, Sergeant Emma Cross, not perfect, not undeniable, but competent, proven, respected. It was enough, more than enough. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. Heard about your promotion. Your father would be so proud. I'm proud, love you. Emma smiled, typed back, love you too, Mum. She walked out of the building into the November afternoon. The rain had stopped. The sun was breaking through the clouds. Soldiers moved across the base, going about their duties. Helicopters circled overhead. The flag snapped in the wind. Fort Campbell, the same base where her father had died, where she'd faced dismissal and mockery, where she'd almost watched 8 people die because pride mattered, more than safety, but also the base where she'd found her voice, where she'd stood her ground, where she'd proven that being right mattered, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Monday morning came. Emma reported to her new office. It was small but had a window, a desk, a computer, and something else, a nameplate. Sergeant Emma Cross. Training and safety evaluation. She sat down, opened her computer, started reviewing the training schedule for the next month. That there were protocols to update, routes to reassess, safety standards to enforce, work to do, important work. Her phone rang, an internal call. Sergeant Cross, this is Captain Williams. I need your assessment on a proposed night training exercise in the ravine area. Can you review and advise? Emma pulled up the files, studied the terrain maps, cross-referenced weather reports and equipment manifests. Captain, I see 3 potential concerns. First, the ravine has flash flood warnings for this week. Second, the night vision equipment scheduled for this exercise hasn't been fully tested. Third, the medical support positioning doesn't account for the access difficulties in that terrain. Understood. What's your recommendation? Emma took a breath. This was her job now, her authority, her responsibility. Postpone until we can address those issues. I can have a full safety analysis and alternative proposals on your desk by end of day. Sounds good, Sergeant. I'll wait for your report. The call ended. Emma sat back in her chair. No argument, no dismissal, no mockery. Just respect and trust. She looked out the window at Fort Campbell, at the soldiers training, at the flag flying high. Somewhere out there, someone was being ignored. Someone was speaking up and being told to stand down. Someone was fighting to be heard. Emma couldn't fix everything, couldn't change every mind, couldn't prevent every injustice, but she could do her job. She could speak truth. She could hold the line on safety and standards, and maybe, just maybe, she could make it a little easier for the next woman who refused to stay silent. That was enough. That was everything. Sergeant Emma Cross opened her first file and got to work. The sergeant had ignored her warning, but he'd watched her save his entire squad, and in doing so, she'd saved something more. She'd saved the idea that competence matters, that courage matters, that speaking truth matters, even when no one wants to listen, especially then.